Week 5 is now in the books, so that means it's time to hit those waiver wires to find players that could add value to the back end of your rosters. And first and foremost, I want to highlight a couple of players that are already very highly rostered, but not exactly 100% that I think need to be, and that includes Jake Browning, quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals, Mac Jones, quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, Sean Tucker, running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Isaiah Davis, running back for the New York Jets, Trevor Etienne, running back for the Carolina Panthers, Darren Waller, tight end for the Miami Dolphins, and AJ Barner, tight end for the Seattle Seahawks. Again, all these guys are rostered in well over 90% of Dynasty leagues out there, but not exactly 100%. So double check your waiver wires and immediately add these guys if they are available. Now, if you are active at all on social media in the fantasy football space, you probably saw a lot of discourse around the Cardinals backfield and which player was the better waiver add and which one was the better start this week. Well, we have a lot of clarity for how this backfield is going to work without Trey Benson for a few more weeks, which is essentially a lot of Michael Carter. Carter saw 23 total touches, 18 carries, and 5 receptions for 73 yards and a touchdown this week, easily leading this backfield compared to Amari DiMercado's 3 touches, including the infamous drop the ball at the goal line as an early celebration play that is just so dumb every single time it happens, and it probably cost Arizona the game. And then also Bam Knight's 5 touches, though he did actually finish the play and find the end zone himself. So clearly, Michael Carter is the primary ad that I would drop pretty much all of your fab for in Dynasty if he's still available in your league. But Amari DiMercado and Bam Knight are also fine ads as stashes because Benson is out at least of 3 more weeks, maybe even more depending on the severity of that injury. So if anything were to happen to Michael Carter in that time frame, then one of or both of the other two would be the main RB1 role in Arizona. More running back injury news this week. Amari Hampton left the game early and then was seen in a walking boot after the game, which is never a good sign. So the main waiver ads here would be Kamani Vidal and Hassan Haskins, 2 players that I've actually highlighted 2 weeks in a row now. So if you've acted on that advice, you would be ahead of the curve on this waiver ad. But seeing as both of these running backs are still available in well over 60% of the MFL leagues that I'm personally sampling from, then I assume everyone reading this has at least one waiver claim to put in this week for the majority of their Dynasty leagues. As for which one is better to prioritize, I truly do not know. Haskins had 6 touches this week. He had 5 carries, 1 reception for 15 yards, while Vidal had 5 touches, 4 carries, 1 reception for 19 yards. They've both been on the team for 2 years, so neither one of them have a system advantage with the LA Chargers. Hassan Haskins has collegiate experience with Jim Harbaugh at Michigan and was already on the active roster when Najee Harris got hurt, while Vidal was the practice squad elevation after Najee Harris's injury. However, we also know that being on the practice squad doesn't mean that you won't be the main starter when you're called upon, as we just literally watched with Michael Carter's usage. So really, I have no idea which one is better and which one would be the better start if Amari Hampton misses time. Subjectively, I personally think Vidal is better. He was more efficient than Haskins last year and was also more efficient this week. Plus, I think he has a bit more of a receiving chops than Hassan Haskins as well. This is why I think that you should find a way to stash both of them if you can, and then watch for practice reports and coach speak to determine who the better play could be if you actually needed to start one, the same way that we literally just did this past week with the Cardinals backfield. But while we're on the topic of backup running backs that you need to be adding this week, it may just be a good time to remind everyone to look over your waiver wire for any relevant backups available so you can add them right now and potentially beat the wire for the next running back injury that comes along. Coming through my rostership data from MFL leagues, a list of names that I would be checking your waiver wires for include Emmanuel Wilson, running back for the Green Bay Packers, Devin Singletary, running back for the New York Giants, Antonio Gibson, running back for the New England Patriots, Dameon Pierce, running back for the Houston Texans, Raheem Mostert, running back for the Vegas Raiders, Xavier Scott, running back for the Minnesota Vikings, and Samaje Perine, running back for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, those are just some of the names that are more widely available in leagues, but does not exclude any of the more premium handcuffs that could also be available if you play in a shallower Dynasty league. Guys like Will Shipley, Isaiah Davis, Jerome Ford, Isaac Guerrero, Kenneth Gainwell, Miles Sanders, Trevor Etienne, Taj Brooks, Jarquez Hunter, Keaton Mitchell, any guys like that who might also be available on your waiver wire. I would be adding as many of these handcuff running backs because we've already seen how injuries can impact all of these handcuff guys and how impactful they can be for your starting lineup. So don't get behind the 8 ball and miss on the next potential running back injury. Get ahead of the waiver wire and stash these guys right now. Now moving on to wide receivers, Kendrick Bourne had himself a night during the Thursday night game, catching 10 passes for 142 yards as the de facto wide receiver 1 for the Niners without Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings. Now should both of those receivers continue to miss time, either both together or even just one individually, individually that would still cause Bourne to be in that wide receiver 2 role for the team. Bourne could be a sneaky play if you are desperate from all the injuries and more bye weeks over the coming weeks, especially if Mac Jones just continues to throw the ball 40 plus times a game, and with the Niners facing Tampa Bay and Atlanta over the next 2 weeks as good defenses to target with your receivers, you might be happy to have a guy like Kendrick Bourne starting for even just a week or two right now. The other big unexpected receiver producer this week was Cowboys wide receiver Ryan Flerney, who hauled in 6 passes for 114 yards on a team-high 9 targets. Now, George Pickens caught the long touchdown as one of his 2 receptions on the day, while Dallas was just killing the Jets with the combination of Jake Ferguson and Ryan Flerney everywhere else on the field. Now, Flerney's role did increase this week with Kevontae Turpin also sidelined, and then Jalen Tolbert is just really not that great of a wide receiver. So Flerney could be another sneaky option if you are desperate for a flex this week with injuries and bye weeks. The Cowboys get the Panthers next week, who could give up fantasy points to receivers at times, though that may not really matter with the way Dak Prescott is playing right now, and Flerney could have himself another solid game in week 6. Now, to wrap up the receiver position this week, if you are in deeper leagues and you need some names to stash, I would take a look at Jalen Hyatt and Beau Collins of the New York Giants, who both saw 3 targets on Sunday, mainly due to Darius Slayton leaving the game early with a hamstring injury. Now, the Giants do have a short turnaround this week with the Thursday night game, so I highly doubt that Darius Slayton is active for that game just a few days after tweaking a hamstring, leaving the door open for another receiver opposite Wan'Dale Robinson to have a bigger role that night. However, they do play the Philadelphia Eagles, who may or may not be a defense that we want to play receivers against, especially technically the 4th and 5th string guys with a rookie quarterback playing in his 3rd career game in a divisional matchup. So probably not guys that you would be picking up and stashing and playing immediately. But Malik Neighbors is done for the year, and if Slayton is out for, let's say, a month or so with a more serious hamstring injury, there may be an extended window here where we could learn that one of Jalen Hyatt or Beau Collins have a larger role and could be played for fantasy football later on down the road. So both of them could be interesting stashes to then find out if they're even worth keeping or not over the next few weeks. But in reality, the main beneficiary of some vacated targets on this Giants team could be tight end Daniel Bellinger, who you may remember as one of the more interesting names at the position a few years ago as an early 4th round pick in 2022 with a stretch of games as a rookie with pretty decent volume. He unfortunately never caught on after that with Daniel Jones. Then the addition of Theo Johnson last year kind of spoiled any real reason to hold on to him. However, without many options to throw to anymore in New York, Bellinger this week caught 4 passes for a team-high 52 receiving yards. Now again, I don't know if I'd actually be playing Daniel Bellinger. You'd be in a pretty desperate spot if you are playing him at your tight end position this week, but this could be a case of a rookie quarterback trusting his tight end more, as well as Dart maybe being more familiar with Bellinger if he was the primary tight end on the 2nd team in practice over the past few months. So we kind of have 2 narratives to spin right now as to why Bellinger could be an okay producer with this opportunity with a rookie quarterback. And then finally this week, I have to highlight Taysom Hill, who made his return to the field this week for the Saints and pretty much immediately went back to that old Swiss Army knife role for a very struggling offense. He saw 6 rush attempts, though he only had -1 rushing yards on those 6 attempts, and he had a 19-yard pass to Juwan Johnson. Now, I received way too many start-sit questions around Taysom Hill this weekend from my video work at 4 for 4, none of which I answered to actually start Taysom this week. But if that is the thought process and perhaps the desperation for some upside at the tight end position in his first week back in redraft leagues, then he should definitely be rostered in Dynasty leagues where we have 3 to 4x the number of bench spots than redraft leagues. Because at the end of the day, it still is Taysom Hill. We've seen the upside that he can have on any given week. It's still the tight end position. There have been a bunch of injuries already to Brock Bowers. We're going to have bye weeks coming up here soon. Maybe you need a guy like Taysom Hill. So if he is available in your league, I would definitely be looking to pick him up as a possible play later on in the future.